time, but we'll try and keep it PG-13. The sun is bright in Phoenix, and the college football current situation. As always, we start with first thoughts. Jim, how are we living?
Living all right, but I do have a caution for the people out there. COVID numbers are going to start going down, and then that might lull you into a false sense of security. Don't let it. COVID numbers are going to be going down because testing is going down, not because COVID is improving. So watch yourselves, wear those masks, don't spit on people, and don't bite anybody.
It's a responsible first word from Jim.
You're welcome.
I listened to a Trump interview, and more testing is actually the problem. So I'm really.
So things are going in the right direction.
Right
now.
direction. Yeah.
Great.
Sean, the mustache is back. Week 5.
It's back. Hey,
Thriving.
I really get mad when my girlfriend Maddie looks at my mustache and says there's shades of ginger in there. But for the first
Dude,
time,
hey, we're not friends anymore.
For the first time, I looked in the mirror. I was like, "Damn, maybe I should get rid of this thing."
That's when I always know to shave.
But hey, last week I had a real positive message about dealing with anxiety and stress, and then I went back to work, and all that all my preaching just went out the drain. I was like, even walking into the building and seeing all the cars parked outside, I was just like, just gave me anxiety, like, oh shit, there's a lot of people here. This is, and I can't think of any other profession that, you go back day one, you just feel like you're, 5 weeks behind. And so, teaching is going to be tough. I've seen a lot of posts out there in social media that have gone viral that are talking about, extending grace to your teachers. And as somebody on this podcast who is unashamed of calling out police, like, you should not extend like, we should be held as teachers to the same standard. Like, it is going to be tough. It is a job that nobody wants, and it's underpaid, but you should still expect a certain quality of product. And so, as a teacher, I'm going to struggle, but if I had to, I'm still talking to these parents out there and stuff, like, talk with your teachers, but also demand a certain level of of product or of education out of them. So look forward to the school year. It's going to be stressful, but it's how it always is, I guess.
I think that's a good point. Teachers got a lot of credit for adapting at the end of last school year. Let's carry that forward.
We'll see, right?
JB, as always, we always expect our most positive and fruitful message from you. We'll expect nothing different today. What's your first thought?
As usual, I'm here for the doom and gloom. No, I want.
Notice I always go right after JB to keep it even keel with you guys.
Yeah, well, with the serious stuff, I want to give a shout out to all the people in the streets in Belarus right now. They, in the face of a 26-year president/dictator, stealing an election, it finally prompted people to get into the streets. And so if you're ever wondering about how much you should value free elections and how much you should value having your voice heard, if you look at a place like that where they're just now starting to wake up, the police have not been kind to them, and they're struggling to kind of have some freedom and to be able to express themselves. And then secondly, I'm sure most of you guys have heard the newest female hip-hop sensation chart-topping song, WAP.
Oh, that's a banger.
Yeah. I want to just give I just want to, if you haven't seen Ben Shapiro's commentary on it, which I would never in a million years at any other time recommend that you listen to Ben Shapiro, but it's the greatest cell phone in the history of cell phones, that he said that his doctor wife said that the wet thing that's a he says female genitalia, but that those are symptoms of some problems.
Kind of unnatural.
Unnatural problems.
That never happens.
And then immediately me and millions of other people on the internet were like, well, thank you for admitting that your wife has never experienced that on your account. But yeah, that was a bright spot. So a little bit of doom, a little bit of optimism.
That's a plus, man.
Yeah,
we're gonna be a good show. My thing is a sad piece of news, depending on what part of the NBA bubble you're living in. It was announced that Instagram models that don't have a actual face-to-face relationship with the NBA players are not allowed in the bubble as family and friends. So
that's tough.
We need a moment of silence.
So real tough, real tough. Lots of players have been shooting shots and making it in the bubble, and now all the shots that have been shot on the Instagram.
Who will be impacted the most by this? after
that's a
J.R.
great
Smith?
question.
Instagram models.
Harden.
Harden.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I would
Dwight Howard.
I mean, yeah. No,
That might
maybe.
go a different way.
Yeah, I would
yeah.
say maybe like Tyler Hero, but he actually started dating the IG model.
Well, that's what Kuzma did. Kuz got
so-
lucky. He was
so
like
some of
started
these-
dating her like 2 weeks ago. and
Yeah,
that's-
some of these
that's
guys got in early, so they're good. But no, that's
probably
tough.
like a Goran Dragic.
talk about an assault on liberty, man. Like,
Yeah,
Man.
that's not right.
COVID strikes again.
That's really unfair. But let's go ahead and start off with on politics. On Saturday, President Trump signed an executive order aimed at partially extending the federal unemployment benefits. Trump's order of $400 extra a week is a 33% reduction from the $600 before that expired earlier this month. Under this plan, the federal government would contribute $300 per week. States would require to chip in the other 25%. Along with that is a payroll tax cut, which we'll talk later about if this is actually a payroll tax cut, and coverage for pre-existing conditions, and if this is anything new. So, JB, we will go ahead and start with you, man. What are your thoughts on the executive order from the big guy up top?
Just a bunch of bullshit. It's
Shocker from
it-
JB.
yeah.
JB anti-Trump today.
Good. Yeah, I wanted to throw you guys a curveball. Yeah, man. If you look like when you first look at this, right? It's kind of for me, it was a bit of a shocker. It was like, oh no shit! Like the debate on whether or not this is the way you legislate and this is the way that you do things. That's another discussion, but I think
It's a fair discussion.
yeah, it is a fair discussion. And I thought for a second, I was like, man, Trump might be kind of undercutting Democrats, because if the stuff in these executive orders actually was true, which we're about to talk about how it absolutely isn't, if it was true, now it could be a thing of like really, really could help him in November, because what the average voter would think is, well, this, damn Congress isn't getting it done, but Trump did.
Yep.
Businessman came through and did it. And just to go through here, the actual order that was signed, and I'm actually not convinced that Trump knows the difference between a bill and an executive order and a memo, and I'm not convinced. But the extension on the eviction moratorium was actually not included on Saturday. It was kind of just a request
Yeah.
from
Like, please don't do it.
from the housing housing and urban development, and from those authorities and the Department of the Treasury. So it's like a suggestion. So again, he wants you to believe that it's an executive order when all that's in the text is a suggestion. Then the $400 unemployment extension is actually $300. So you were not wrong in reporting that, because that's what it was originally reported as, but it's $300. So it's been cut by 50%. The payroll tax cut, if you don't have a job, or if you don't own a business, then that's not going to help you very much. And
And am I right? Have you seen that it's really more of a deferral?
It
to
is
a
a-
later
it-
date?
no,
Correct?
it-
That's
it's
what I
it's
saw
a
there.
deferral.
And what that is for the viewers at home, what that means is, like, when you get your paycheck, they might not have any federal income taxes taken out for the month of September or October, but eventually you're gonna pay. Like, we need to pay for this stimulus package, and it's gonna come down the road one way or the other. It doesn't mean it's eliminated altogether.
Well, and then finally the coverage for pre-existing conditions, and that's another thing. There's been a few things in the last few weeks where Trump has tried his damnedest to take credit for something, and it's something that already exists. So just because it was put in the executive order doesn't mean that it didn't already exist in Obamacare, because that was one of the assertions there, was that you can't be denied coverage because of pre-existing conditions. The price obviously varies, but you can't be denied coverage. So that already existed. And so it's like with everything else at this time, all the executive orders all the points in this executive order from Trump they're for show, basically. And so I can admit that if they were what he said they were going to be, I would have been kind of at an impasse, because it would be like, oh shit, like this guy actually is bypassing Congress, but he's doing something that helps working Americans and helps people during a pandemic. But in reality, it's not going to stop people from being evicted. It's not going to help people that are on unemployment by very much, especially people that live East Coast, West Coast with that money. So, that's my long-winded take, is that it's all for show and it is very much a political move. But for average Americans, it's not a big help.
Sean?
Yeah. Well, in a sense, it is some of it is for show, Justin, but at the same time, I'm a little bit upset with Democrats for not being able to kind of compromise, if you will, because like you said, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to see this executive action and they're going to take it as a win for Trump. Well, when Congress did enact, Trump did. And I think Congress, which is ran by the Democrats right now with the majority, I think they could have made
The House is
the House. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. They could have made some concessions to kind of avoid that happening. And what I mean by that is them being kind of stuck on the $600 unemployment. We're not talking about a $1,200 stimulus check to all of us like we all saw. Or not, well, most of us saw back in, what was that, in April, May for most of us.
Yeah.
That's off the table right now, and I'll talk about that later. What I'm talking about is the Democrats sticking to that $600 unemployment figure, a figure that is made out of that $15 minimum wage argument that Democrats have been pushing for a while now. So $15 an hour, 40 hours a week. That's your $600. That's your $600 a week, essentially, right? And so that's based off of some sort of figure of a modern standard of living. What I wish would happen is if we kind of met in the middle. I'm not for a $15 minimum wage right now. I think in some parts of the country, we talked about, you need $15 an hour to survive. In other parts of the country, you might not need as much. But I just wish that, they brought that figure down just a little bit and they took away that opportunity. If we're playing chess here, you take away that opportunity for Trump to be able to say, hey, look what I did. And you give some sort of concessions to where Republicans in the House would show out and sign a bill.
Well, and what do you think that would be? Like so if we're talking about a common sense relief, an actual relief bill, so not executive orders that circumvent Congress, but like what, to my understanding, what Republicans have a problem with is giving people money during a pandemic. So they're going to want that number to be as low as possible because at the end, you got to have money to bail out your corporate friends and you got to have money for inflated military budgets.
Yeah.
So if they get their way and there's less money going into people's pockets for unemployment, what do you think the Democrats should be asking for? What do you think they're if it's accepted that like, hey, this shit's not going to pass through a Republican dominated Senate? What could, if they agree to that dollar amount, what concession do you think that's realistic that they could get?
So realistic, and I'm gonna be real quick here because Jim looks like he has a lot. Jim has a lot on his chest right now.
Jim's ready to unload.
Let me be really quick here. If you adjust, so the minimum wage was set in 2007. It was raised in 2007 to $7.25, right?
Right.
And since then, it has not increased. And so, if you adjusted the minimum wage today for the cost of living, the national average, considering inflation and the rising cost of living, it would be at $11.60.
Yeah.
Right. That's if they got it correct in 2007. It would be at $11.60 today. If you kind of took that number and you multiply by 52 weeks in the year, divided by 12 months, multiply by 12, divided by 52, because you want to get a weekly check, right?
Yeah.
That would be around $476. So instead of approaching Republicans in the House with 600, and I get it. Like if you're negotiating, you start high and you kind of meet in the middle somewhere.
But that's a good logic to use, is to say, listen, like, just because you haven't raised the federal minimum wage since 2007, guess what? Like cost of living hasn't slowed down because of that. Cost of rent hasn't slowed down because of that. Hell, like the cost of beer hasn't slowed down because of that. So it's like
true.
So it's like you have to me, if you present those numbers and just say, look, man, like this is where it should be just for cost of living, because so many of those people that represent us have no idea what it costs to live because they haven't had to do it for so long.
Yeah, they don't shop for six packs like we do.
Yeah, exactly.
Jim, what are you thinking over there, man?
Well, I'm thinking people are mistaken about the intent of the $600. The $600 is that high specifically to provide a disincentive for people to try and get back to work because we're in the middle of a COVID problem, right? What, do you disagree with that?
I don't believe that it's an incentive for people to not go back to work.
That is exactly the reason for it. They want people
for political gain. Is what you're saying.
Jimmer with a haymaker from the right.
I want you to explain yourself.
Take that. Well, you agree that the desire, medical desire, I guess, is to keep people isolated, social distancing, and all that stuff. You go back to work, act like things are normal, and COVID spikes again, or never goes down, or takes forever.
in this fine country we live in, though, if you're on unemployment, you don't get your employee benefits. Like you're not getting the health care that you need. You're not. So
Right.
that's what's always gotten me about this argument. So like in another country, if you're in a democratic socialist society, then it's like you could kind of argue that if people can get by on this money and they're guaranteed health care, they're guaranteed these things by the state, what's the incentive? That's a common argument against those societies. But it's like here, I mean, there are very few places where you can live comfortably off that money, like where you can live and be able to cover yourself if something happens medically, and to be able to cover so many different things. There's very few places where you can do that. So that's why I've never bought the, that it's an incentive to not work.
Yeah. I just struggle to meet that point. I understand what you're saying. We don't want people to add to the number of cases and the spread of the virus, but to me it's a cop out in a sense. Like if you live in a free market society, like how come we don't put the responsibility on this capitalist nation to come up with the innovation to keep their businesses running? Like, and I say that because I can walk outside and there are certain bars that have kind of circumvented the rules and they found a way to be open. And so like, I hate that we automatically put it on the other guy, or the blue collar worker. Well, he wants to get back to work, but like, no, what are these businesses doing to kind of meet us halfway and to innovate to get people back to work in today's world? Because today's world's different than what it was 6 months ago.
Well, that's a fair point, but I will tell you that you should never, ever, ever underestimate the ingenuity of a profit-seeking business owner.
I'd love it to come out right now.
Okay, well, it's being hamstrung by federal regulations that people aren't allowed to go to certain places, right?
What I'm saying, Jim, is that you could get innovative and they're not. We've poured billions of dollars into companies like Moderna to create a vaccine, to companies like Novavax that are going to
Kodak.
Yeah, that are going to manufacture these vaccines once they become, once they go through the clinical trials. Like, where are all these other companies at trying to innovate to get people back to work? That's essentially what I'm saying. Instead of blaming it on, well, Joe over here doesn't want to go back to work because he's getting $600 a week. What about Joe's employer that can just make a little bit of change to be able to get him to come back to work? Like, where's the pressure put on these companies that we were so quick to put at the priority of our first stimulus package? Where's the priority put on them, or the pressure put on those guys to perform?
Okay, so now you're fair enough, and you're saying that the business owners should innovate so that they can get these people back.
Innovate
to work.
or die. That's what it
Innovate
is,
or die,
right?
sure, but then they have to pay these people at what appears to be a wage higher than what they're getting now in order to make it happen.
Well, and that's his.
That's fair.
No. That's the argument that's been put forth a lot, and this
Right.
is where I'm coming from, is that if people are upset about the possibility of people making more on unemployment than they do at their job, why is it not being talked about more that maybe these employers aren't paying living wages?
They're not paying enough to begin with.
No, they're not paying living wages. And so what I'm arguing is, like, obviously these people are alive, but the people that we're talking about are either below the poverty line or they are hovering around the poverty line. So I get the argument from the employers, but the problem is we're living in a system where it's normalized to pay people non-living wages. And so then on unemployment, with the numbers that we're talking about, semi-living wages, depending on what part of the country you live in, it's an issue. And so that's my gripe would be, why have we normalized paying people this for working full-time jobs?
Yeah,
Jim,
I like that. Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question that I kind of feel like I fall somewhere in between. But do you feel like your case would be a lot stronger if our healthcare wasn't in combination with our employment?
Most definitely.
Like, don't you think that
Absolutely.
would change this conversation a great deal if that was the situation?
Absolutely. But for instance, I'm married. I have health insurance for my whole family. My wife doesn't need health insurance through her employer. She can get it. She has it. No, she doesn't. She could get it, but she doesn't need it. So the health insurance aspect of it is irrelevant to her. If the $600 business is, she's a teacher too, so that part doesn't matter. But if she worked at Walgreens as a checker and got laid off, then she would be getting that extra 600, and it would mean a whole lot to her to replace her income completely if that's what where she was professionally. So it is definitely relevant for that group of people. There's a significant portion of the population that for whom the health insurance benefits and maybe even retirement benefits are irrelevant. They want their money now. These 25-year-old grown people living at home with their parents, they don't worry about that other stuff. They just want the extra money.
I guess my argument, Jim, is that I hate, and Justin, you brought this, I hate how hard it is to take taxpayer dollars and give it back to the taxpayers. And the same could be said when
That's
we're talking
a fair
about
point. That's
when we're talking
definitely a fair
about
point.
Trump having the ability, and using executive order, executive action is already kind of a touchy subject to begin with, right? Where you can kind of, you can kind of work around Congress, if you will. But why is it easier for President Trump to use money to build a border wall, but he can't use that same executive action to write stimulus checks that he's put his name on before? You understand what I'm saying? Like, because right now, a second stimulus check, like for people that are not employed, people like me and you, like that's off the table right now. He can't do that without Congress's approval. But apparently he can, move money around to build a
Money
wall
that's
that
already
Mexico,
been allocated.
that not for a border wall.
Well, that's how he's couching it. Well, this is
And-
technically, it's in this
and
it's
that's
been
what I'm
allocated
saying
for
is
this
that
purpose,
it's easier.
and this wall serves that purpose. Therefore,
And that's what I'm saying. My argument is that why is it easier for us to make arguments to put money towards a border wall or for a military than it is to give it back
Yeah.
to the taxpayers when they're in need?
Can we go back real quick and then just I do want to go back to our original point. We've kind of
Yeah.
gotten into the weeds a little bit.
Gotcha.
Do you guys think to
We
the
did.
common, not to us, not to the people that listen to the Skate Pod that are in this, the common person that will catch a 15-second run from Fox News or CNN, that this is going to be a political win to most of the common viewers, that when Congress
Yeah,
didn't
yes.
step up, like I think this is a clear win.
because of the way that it's framed. But
Nope.
what's sad is
I
that
disagree.
because of the way that
You
it,
don't think this is a
No.
positive for him?
It started out that way, but it was so easily everybody saw through it. At least it didn't take very long if you're thinking about this stuff. How long did it take you to figure that out?
not long.
This is
about
it's all
5
smoke and
minutes.
mirrors.
I
it
just wanna
started out
know-
looking good, and
Well,
it
to
was
the-
clearly a political
I just think it's really
ploy.
interesting to think about, like, not necessarily because I think sometimes politicians get too deep into the people that really care about politics. That's not
Yeah,
necessarily
for
how
sure.
you always win.
I'm with you on this.
So I always think it's really interesting. I still think that most people didn't even do half of what JB did, and probably a third or a fifth. I think most people look at this as still of a positive right now. That would
Absolutely.
be my
I'm
basic
right there,
thought.
I'm right there with you. Y'all are giving
At
way
least-
too
at
much
least-
credit to
at
the
least
average
his
voter.
at least
and
his
that's
base.
possible.
But this is so before we transition, man. Like this is something that I wanted to read because I think the four of us at this table are fortunate enough to be outside of the group that I'm about to talk about. But when it comes to
Maybe not.
well, when
Don't
it
you-
when
don't you
and hopefully
call me
some
a Ricky Bobby.
hopefully our listeners are too. But I'm what I'm saying is when it comes to relief during a pandemic or during a time of need, and we're talking about taxpayer dollars actually coming back to the people. This is from a forum that I read. This is from someone in Georgia, and the headline is, "I have $26 left." It says, I'm on the way to another state for a medical emergency with my fiance, and I'm broke. Tomorrow, my $250 comes in. The $600 was keeping her medicine in stock. I can't afford one copay. Jesus, I hope they come to an agreement soon. Why is the House allowed to adjourn until the 14th? Come on, reps. I need to buy medicine, food, and gasoline. I don't even care about rent at this point. So that's where we're at. So you have people in Washington that each one of them is making a 6-figure a year salary, and they absolutely have not been able to pass something common sense to be able to bring relief to working Americans. And so it's like, even if you're middle class, even and sometimes if you're lower middle class, we don't feel those same feelings. But we're talking about millions and millions of people. We're talking about populations of entire countries. Like, right, our country's so
Yeah.
big. We're talking about populations of entire countries that are living below the poverty line and that are absolutely on their last leg right now. And so it's like you would like to imagine that if a president's going to bypass Congress and do these executive orders, that it would actually bring some sort of relief, and that would be a net positive. So to answer your question, I think with his base, it will be another big talking point, another big bragging point. But for actual working Americans, I mean, they'll find out that it's not true because they won't have any relief.
Unfortunately, it might not just be his base, because this relief plays to people who Democrats typically try and court. So some of them might be swayed by it. Hopefully not, because it's been very quickly exposed to nothing but smoke and mirrors.
Well, let's go ahead and move on. We'll let JB set the stage on the next thing is some of the stuff that's happening in Chicago. JB, can you kind of fill us in, and then we can talk briefly about this, and then go on to our favorite VP candidate.
Yeah. So as most of you well know, there have been massive riots in Chicago for the last almost the last week or so, with Elon Musk's Tesla building was attacked and looted. There have been lots of property damage, hundreds and hundreds of arrests, and it's been lumped in as a BLM protest. I think I'm actually going to surprise some people here, because it's like with this one, for all the facts that I'm able to take in.
Leave Elon Musk alone, man.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't give a shit about him. But in this case, it seems as if the premise for the riots is is misguided. And so in the case of like Breonna Taylor, pardon me, but like I'm not going to have any sympathy if there are riots in Louisville. With George Floyd in Minneapolis, I'm not advocating for destruction of small businesses, but when it comes to like federal buildings and protests against police, for those things, I feel like they're justified. But from what I've read in Chicago, the premise was that an unarmed 15-year-old was shot and killed by police. And it turns out that it was actually a 20-year-old and not only armed, but firing shots at police. And so because of misinformation, that's the riot started, because I don't think that I don't think that you see that type of violence and that type of unrest if the facts were known. And so it's not even a thing. It's not even a thing like there's not even a thin line. It's quite a broad line. It's a story of an unarmed child being killed, changed to the actual story of it being an armed adult that was shooting at police for whatever reason. So, yeah. And now that could lead to possible Fed involvement in Chicago, and it turns into a bigger thing.
So let me focus on that last part, because I'm not as up to date as you are with what's going on in Chicago. But you said there is not, as of right now, there is not a huge or
Not
any
a-
federal presence at all that we've seen in Portland.
Well, I mean, obviously the feds have offices and have people in
Yeah.
Chicago, but it's not what was done in Portland yet. But at the moment, because of how severe they got, you would have to believe that the government is either going to, they've already threatened it, but you would have to believe that there's probably going to be some presence on the
Yeah.
ground
So
in the next day or two.
Do you believe that there is, like when you hear that there's a Black Lives Matter movement that is active and alive and loud in Chicago today concerning surrounding the events that are going on, are you buying that, or you think that that's just something that the media is kind of picking up and running with?
I think it's probably a little bit heavier on the latter. And the reason why I say this is I think Chicago is an easy target
Yeah.
for the right,
For
because
sure.
because you can accurately reference homicide numbers from year to year. Like it takes turns with other cities as the murder capital of the country. So I mean, you'll have more murders in Chicago this year than you will in many countries in Europe, right? So like what I kind of get frustrated with is like I'm 100% on the side of BLM protests against police brutality, but at the same time, things like this don't come off as constructive. And so as a white guy, I have to take a step back and say, well, it's not my movement.
Let me I just sorry for interrupting, but
Yeah.
like there's a lot of without a doubt, I think we're all in agreement that we know that the mainstream media is definitely left leaning for sure. We can all admit that for the most part, right? It is
Define left.
it is an American
left-leaning.
politically
Okay.
left leaning in that
Okay,
sense,
which
right?
which for the rest of the entire world
Is-
means moderate.
Sure.
Right.
Okay. Well, hey, we're not going to go there,
Got
but
it.
what I'm saying is, I think that a lot of people are frustrated with this Black Lives Matters movement because one, they don't understand it, Justin, but secondly, it's decentralized by design. Does that make sense? You know,
Yeah.
if you didn't assassinate civil rights leaders in the 1960s, like it was, you know, it was a trend in the 60s to be assassinated if you were standing up for any sort of civil rights.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what leads us here today. Like when you think about Black Lives Matter, I can't think of a single household name that we can attach to that movement that's going to give it, I'm not going to say legitimacy, but
No,
where it can give
you're
it
right.
direction. And so I think a lot of times we're loosely saying that, oh, Black Lives Matter is prominent in this city or in this movement.
Well, it's
Um,
athletes now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, whether it is or not, I'm saying that is by design. You have to take the good with the bad.
It plays in. You're right, but that plays into the hands of not just right-wing media, but of the administration. Because if there's leadership, then you can look at them after something happens and say, hey, what the fuck?
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
But in this case, you can't pin a leader of Black Lives Matter. You can't. There's no headquarters, and it's the same thing with Antifa. Like it's like, in general, it's a pretty good thing, I think, to be anti-fascist. But there's no leader. There's no centralized thing, and so if something goes wrong, now you're able to kind of, you're able to kind of pigeonhole the entire movement because of one bad thing.
Yeah.
And so I guess like I said, man, all across the country, there've been the vast majority have been like absolutely justified outrages against police brutality. But in this case, with this story, with what sparked it and what sparked the actual riots, because they were especially violent, what sparked that was some false information and was kind of a false narrative. And so it's not constructive for the actual BLM movement. And then also when it comes to Chicago, you would like to see, again, this is a white guy talking about it, but I just from the outside looking in, you would like to see the same type of collective outrage for the skyrocketing murder rate in inner city Chicago that you see for, in this case, what was a 20-year-old armed guy popping off at police.
Yeah.
And so it's not, what's going on in that case is not constructive. So in many cases, you could say a riot is the language of the unheard. In this case, it's people that are fed up, but what sparked it was, it's not, you can't compare it to justified martyrs in other places.
One of the things that concerns me about rioting in Chicago right now, for instance, is if you've had a 3-year-old in your house, a 5-year-old, let's call it a 5-year-old.
I did.
Did your 5-year-old ever do something that made you laugh?
She did many of times. Yeah.
And when she noticed that, that's what your next hour was. That same thing over and over and over again. And it was no longer funny. It didn't have the effect anymore that the first one did. That's what rioting does. You keep rioting, and now it's just, oh, here they go again. And it loses its effectiveness.
So are you, Jim, and this is an entirely different podcast, right? Or at least a night out of beers. Are you saying, well, if we're comparing to a peaceful demonstration or, civil disobedience, are you saying that you think that those are more effective in our free societies than riots historically?
Well, that is a good question, and I'm not prepared to answer it. I don't know.
All right.
I don't know.
Okay.
That is definitely one for a night out.
All right.
Well, in other news, yesterday Joe Biden selected California Senator and former Attorney General Kamala Harris as his VP. So let's do a quick roundtable on thoughts on that. I do have to admit I assume I'm gonna be one of the more pro. I don't know if y'all watched the press conference today, but she was really good.
I didn't watch it.
Really, really well spoken. I know there's some real problems in her being a progressive prosecutor.
Don't worry, we'll get there.
So I know that that's going to be an issue, and I'm not pro that, but I do think there's a symbol to the fact of a black woman holding that position, and I think that the young women that are growing up, children, that a young black woman can look and see that they can do whatever they want in this country, is something that's powerful. I think that's an awesome thing in that sense. I know we're going to talk about some of the layers to this, but I think that she's proven, whether it be when she was grilling Kavanaugh or Sessions, that when prepared, she has the ability to really do some good things. And I think, like I said, I know we'll delve deeper into some of the other parts of that, but I was very surprisingly moved when she was talking. I was very impressed. Like, she did a great job. She told stories about, her and Joe Biden's, I forget which son it was that she knew very well for a while. But I was just very, very impressed with her speaking and talking about a vision going forward. And it was nice to see what a non-Donald Trump, president type person would be talking. So I know this will be the only positive thing probably for a bit, but I'll throw it over to you, JB, and let you talk about all the negatives of this progressive prosecutor.
God damn it. Yeah, it was one of those things, right? Like, there was nobody in the field of possibilities that I was excited about or that I thought was cool at all. And anybody with a brain kind of knew that it was either going to be Harris or Warren. And so my quick rundown would be that a corporate Democrat person of color is still a corporate Democrat at the end of the day. Also, it became pretty clear that Elizabeth Warren, it became clear that Elizabeth Warren sold out for nothing. So she sold out the progressive cause. She kind of undercut Bernie on Super Tuesday for nothing, and was rewarded with nothing as of now, other than a speaking position at the DNC. And then if there are any vice presidential debates, I guess the GOP would do well to try to woo Tulsi Gabbard into at least coaching Mike Pence. But then again, I don't know how a VP debate will work, because doesn't Mike Pence's wife have to be present if he's going to be in a room with another woman?
Jesus.
Right. So yeah, it's a very DNC move is what I'll say. That's what I'll end with. It's the most DNC selection of all, because just like in 2016, when it was the year of the anti-establishment, they opted to help the most establishment candidate as possible. And then now in 2020, it's like the year of outrage against police brutality and law reform and everything else. And your selection is Kamala Harris.
I watched all the Democratic debates during the primaries, and a lot of people saw that shining moment with Kamala Harris early on where she attacked Joe Biden. And then after she kind of dwindled down, I think the general consensus was, man, she would, maybe she's not a presidential candidate right now, but she would sure as hell make a fine VP. Right. And so I would be wrong to kind of step back right now and criticize her being the VP choice for Joe Biden, because I was definitely one of the people that was saying the same thing back during the primary. So I think she's a strong VP choice. We're talking about debates, Justin.
She's gonna do great.
If I had a choice, I would let her debate Donald Trump about Joe Biden.
As long as she's not debating Tulsi Gabbard, she'll be fine.
That's fine. And I said the same
no
thing
Tulsi
about
Gabbard in the Republican Party. I promise you that.
And you can blame Elizabeth
Shout out
Warren.
Tulsi.
You can blame the DNC, whoever you want. But I think Kamala Harris I think she's a fine. Would I want her to be more left leaning? For sure, absolutely. But we're not going to get any of that with Joe Biden in office. So I think if we're talking about beating Donald Trump, if you're one of those never Trump in that never Trump camp, I think Kamala Harris is a fine choice.
Jim, what do you think, man?
Well, clearly, as you pointed out, it was it's a strategic move. A woman, a black woman, holy moly! Oh, she's Jamaican and potentially American Indian, I guess.
South Asian?
Who isn't these days?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
So, but at what time in American history has the challenger to the incumbent not made their vice presidential or their running mate selection for strategic reasons?
Yeah,
like politically strategic reasons, not policy. This person's great on policy.
That's a good point, because that's a huge balance to the ticket. So if you have, and this is where I get not positive, but I get real, I guess, as far as like where we're going from here. You've got super old Joe Biden from Delaware, and then you've got one of the younger, more energetic, stronger personality candidates from Cali. And so you've covered your bases as far as diversity. You've covered your bases as far as region,
Geography.
yeah, just geographically speaking, you've covered your bases there. And again, if I'm saying this objectively, I do think that's their strongest ticket.
Well, I would say this too. Like, if you put Donald Trump, Mike Pence, her and Joe Biden in a room together, she's the most impressive person out of the four.
I agree.
Like, I don't think it's
Not even close.
I don't think it's close either. Like, she is the person. Like, she spoke for about 25 minutes, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Like, I was very, very impressed. Like, some of it you could tell there were lines that they had rehearsed and talked about, work well with their people, but that's every speech these days.
Yeah.
But I think out of the four of them, she is the person that I would like to go listen to the most. And to me, that's a huge win for the Joe Biden candidacy, because I sure as hell don't want to listen to Joe Biden for more than 5 minutes. So I think that's really relevant, and I said I find her very impressive in a lot of different ways.
Again, personality wise, I'm not disputing that. But since since our panel seems to be on a huge Harris high, I just want to run down just the problematic, few problematic things. So prior to being a senator, she was a district attorney in the Bay Area for San Francisco.
Shout out to the Bay.
Yeah, and then was the attorney general for California. So this is somebody that declined support for legalization of marijuana, and then admitted on the Breakfast Club in an interview and laughed about it, saying that she herself smoked weed many times.
Who hasn't?
Didn't inhale.
Did not support legislation requiring body cams for police. Opposed independent investigation of police shootings in California. Damn. Which I don't know is kind of a big deal these days.
Damn.
Favored California's 3 strikes law.
Damn.
Yeah. And so what I'm saying is this is somebody who, again, it's the most DNC decision ever, is that in the year where people are clamoring and where the populist movement is moving towards legal reform and towards forgiveness for nonviolent offenders and for reforming things that have put countless Black lives in jail, nonviolent Black lives in jail, she's absolutely not been a liberator in that sense. She's been very much a part of the structure that's kept things that way. So again, I'm not doubting what you guys are saying. I'm not disputing what you guys are saying, but I also think it's because of the quality of the room, not because of the quality of the candidate.
Those are all great points, Justin. And I will say that we can't expect her to be anything that Joe Biden isn't himself.
That's right.
And so I think she falls right in line with where Joe Biden is at as a moderate. And maybe the people haven't spoken, but the DNC certainly has spoken. And if that's what they want to run, they're sure as hell running a strong moderate ticket at this point. Let's be honest. When Donald Trump was elected in 2016, he's elected as the oldest president to ever live. And Joe Biden is kind of faced with that task. If Joe Biden completes his first term in office, he will be 82 years old. Gross. And that is obviously, we're not even close to ever touching that moment.
You said this, I think last week though, like I have no qualms with having a female president, right? But it would be great if she was elected and didn't inherit the office.
It would be great, Justin. But what I'm saying is if we have to pick something, like I would have loved to have, I as much as I wouldn't have in the primaries, I wasn't behind her, but I would have liked an Elizabeth Warren to be on the ticket when it seemed like it came down to, when the list got shorter and shorter. Yeah. But if this is all that we're left with, I'm just saying she's not the worst. She's not the worst pick.
Strategically speaking, it's not the worst pick. Yeah. That's as objective as I can get. It's just, like I said, it's 2020 is a year where irony is pretty much dead. And so in this case, it continues to be dead. But the final thing that I noticed, I guess, is like to not let up on certain fake progressives. you guys are probably all familiar with Sean King and his commentary. And so like there were moments during the height of the BLM protests where it was like, oh man, like I don't find myself agreeing with Sean King normally, but now I do. He had a tweet that said, I'll be frank and tell you two Democrats that I'm 99% sure I won't be supporting, primarily because of their dismal history on criminal justice reform, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They both helped build and advance mass incarceration. And then today, after the announcement, that's it for me. I'm incredibly proud to see a brilliant black woman, an HBCU grad, chosen as a vice presidential nominee. I've done political work my whole life. It's rarely things that dreams are made of. Kamala Harris is the most progressive VP nominee in American history. I would say that says more about American history than it does her. So, yeah, shout out to Sean King and Ben Shapiro for being the two laughing stocks this week. Thank you.
That's good stuff.
We're I know we have some people that are always wanting us to get to sports. We have some people that just want this to be straight politics. But I do want to run through this real quick. Let's roll through like in a couple minutes. The DNC speakers, we have a 2-to-1 ratio of progressives to Republicans on the thing. So I thought that was super super interesting.
Wait, hold on,
At-
it's
at the
Kasich and who else?
At the DNC.
No. It's well, I mean, AOC and Bernie are the two
okay,
progressives,
I got
and then
you.
there's one Republican.
Okay, I thought you said 2 to 1
I
the
know.
other
Once
way.
we do math to a history teacher, it gets
Yeah,
confusing.
so for
I'll
those
write
of-
it down.
been
for
a
you
while.
next
Yeah,
time,
so for those of you that didn't know, at the convention, Republican from Ohio, John Kasich, is set to speak. Not just speak, but speak for Joe Biden, basically. So if you wanted to know where progressivism was on the totem pole, there you have it.
no Andrew Yang, which that hurt.
No, that
hurt.
was a big surprise, right? Is
I
that-
wanted
that-
Andrew, Tulsi Gabbard, Elizabeth Warren. I would have
that
put
would have
all
been
three of those.
that would have been interesting. So like
And it's bridging the party. It's different people.
Well,
Like
not-
they're the people that are bringing different groups in.
wouldn't you imagine that like
I was very happy AOC. was
yeah
on there, though.
well wouldn't you imagine though that okay, if moderate 1990s Republican type people like Joe Biden, if those are the winners, they're in charge, but you would imagine at a convention you would like to have speakers from different parts of the spectrum,
Most definitely.
and
Yeah.
a few notable people being Andrew Yang being one of them missed out because they had to make room for Republicans, I guess.
Justin, hey, hot seat. You got to answer this in 5 seconds,
Uh-oh.
okay?
Oh shit.
We're
I'll do the
appealing.
countdown.
I'm not sure what
soon as he's done, I'll
part
say
of the
5.
spectrum that this guy puts on, but if we're trying to appeal to other voters, if I'm Joe Biden,
Shit.
I want to bring in Kanye West. Which cabinet position do you give him?
5, 4, 3.
Direct,
Department of Defense.
Fuck.
That's 50 Cent.
If there's a department of like cultural, like not even cultural, like department of relations that has to do, like they have a department for sports, I guess, that like was given to some dumb son. Rudy Giuliani's son is like the sports liaison. I would give Kanye like a hip hop liaison thing. Like that'd be all right. That's it though. He's too busy meeting with Jared Kushner though. He doesn't have
I
time.
love that question
Okay.
though.
Yeah.
I was really happy like that AOC got on there. I had heard last week via an AOC interview that she had never even spoken or text with Joe Biden, so that hurt.
Yeah. He
For her-
never reached out.
Never once. So for her to be on that,
They-
for her to be on that,
It's at least a sign that
it's something good.
they realize
Yeah.
with the DNC absolutely has no fucking love for Bernie and very little love for AOC. So it's like the
And-
fact that they realize they need them at the convention is at least some type of concession.
Yeah,
But
Pete Booker and Obama were like probably their first round draft picks over there. Like,
Yeah, oh my
E3,
God.
E3 or automatic, but yeah,
oh my goodness.
Pistol Pete. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the sports section. So Dame Lillard has made the news early and often in the bubble, playing out of his damn mind. Most recently, dropping 61 points, averaging 56 in his last 2 games, busting the Mavs and JB's favorite team hopes
That's right.
and dreams
That's right. That's right.
Tuesday night.
We already got a playoff spot, so
That's right.
but yeah, they
Yeah,
did
dude,
though.
y'all
They
do have
they
that.
did bust our
I
ass.
do have that. That's awesome. Y'all are gonna have a great time getting busted by the
That-
Clips.
That's true.
But and
no
earlier
argument.
in the week, started to beef with Pat Bev and Paul George, and then
Saucy.
smoked 2 free throws that game. That I'm a big Dame guy, but he did
Can't do that.
missed both those, and the Clippers are trying to lose to him. Paul George didn't play in the fourth quarter. Like they were playing all their backups. They definitely want the Blazers to play the Lakers, their main rival. But
Right.
What are y'all's thoughts on, everyone talks about everyone's friends nowadays. Like there's been a lot of shit talk. Giannis headbutting people, James and Giannis talking, Dame talking to everybody. It's tough, right?
I want to ask Jim about this because I don't want to say he's got some years on us, but he's got some years on us. Jim was watching basketball at the time where guys fucking hated each other. Like where
we're back.
Now it's almost back because that's been the big gripe from a lot of old heads. Like, man, LeBron, all these guys are all friends, and it's like there's actually like guys are yelling out like, hey, you want smoke? Like 485 is my room number. Like whatever. Like so.
What was it like?
How do you
Tell us about the good old days?
How does it
son?
how does it feel? How does it feel to have some fire and some non
I love
camaraderie?
it. You have to have somebody to really hate for more than just he's a good player and people throwing haymakers.
Yeah.
Ever watch Bill Laimbeer? My God,
Back in
what
my
a
day.
dick!
Yeah. Oh,
He was a bowler, right?
today he would be.
And Larry Bird, by the way, was the biggest trash talker there was.
No, that's
Holy shit.
the thing. I think in the bubble, guys are.
Well, they can all hear each other now, which is so cool.
They
Like,
can
I think
all-
that's helping it. Before the crowd is so loud, maybe a guy talks something to you, you don't
Yeah,
hear it.
If a guy
Now
talks,
everyone can hear it.
if
in
a
the
guy
gym
talks
when
shit
someone
to you
says-
from half court and you're on the baseline, you hear that.
It's awesome.
I enjoy
Maybe
it.
they just need to stay in the bubble. It's been great. I've loved every minute of this.
Well, and what we talked about earlier, like now for the playoffs, they're going to allow what basically amounts to family and conjugal visits, and it's like you're not the
Should be some child rearing going on.
yeah. There's been some pent up rage, and it's like it's been a while since all these guys had to focus on was basketball, and so it's just like now the shit talking's been raised, the competitive level's been raised, so there are some pros to the bubble. I
think the thing we should look at now that you say this, JB, is I think we have to find a way to gamble on the fact that in like 18 to 20 years, whenever all these NBA players are just forced to just like have sex and play basketball, that the children that are going to come out of this are just going to be incredible players. And you want a draft pick in 18 to 19 years is what I'm thinking.
I
That
thought
you really
that was
want.
the appeal to being a pro, that lifestyle. No.
I mean, yeah, but they're used to that
Yes.
lifestyle. But now they've been stuck in the bubble where there's like throwing sandbag with the other players. Like whenever the families are allowed in, they're gonna be having fun. But what are your thoughts? Sorry, we kind of went off.
Let's get back to Dame.
Yeah,
Look,
Sean's.
let's not
Sean's
pretend-
in a relationship. He doesn't want to talk about
Man,
this. Let's
Sorry.
talk about Dame.
Hi, Maddie.
I love
Sean's a great guy.
I love
guys.
Dame, man.
Everyone, he's such a good
Look,
dude.
before the
Such a nice
lockdown,
guy.
before the lockdown ever even happened, Dame was killing it. He was on a mission, right? Like we saw the Dame Lillard
Murder.
that came out in that OKC matchup against Westbrook a couple years prior. Like he's on a mission right now, man, and that's what he is. At the same token, guys, I will say this: like I am not sure if I believe all the hype of the
Ooh, here we go.
bubble. I think, like y'all said, I think that we're reaching at trying to bring viewers in, and so we're playing on the fact that we can hear these conversations. These are normal conversations. This is if I go out and play in the men's league tonight, we're gonna hear the same type of shit talking. I'm just not as good as fucking Damon Lillard.
Dude,
you
but
know?
Sean, let me ask you a question. Let me press you on this a little bit. Like my very first like post-COVID MMA fight was at your house. You're grilling up great food. Maddie was awesome, doing all the work. Sean was doing the work in his jeans.
Flipping the chickens.
Are you telling me that MMA wasn't kind of cool to see, to just hear the kicks, to hear the NBA players working, to hear the MMA guys fighting, just for it to feel a little bit more real? You're telling me that those two experiences aren't a little bit better, and as someone who's played a little bit, that doesn't hype you up just a little bit?
Look, I was hyped. I was hyped, but
Thank
this
you.
is what I don't want to see, Dustin.
I rest my case.
I don't want to in
You can
20
stop there if you
years.
want.
No, when I'm watching the next Last Dance and it's LeBron's last dance,
Ooh,
I don't want to hear
About to
any
be
shit
Kawhi.
about how the COVID championship that LeBron secured was the most coveted ever, and it is not.
Oh,
Just
shit.
relax.
Sean's
It's
a fucking
the
hater.
NBA is doing whatever it
Is
can
it
right
Sean
now.
Spann or Skip Bayless to my
God,
left
I
over
hate
here?
The NBA is doing whatever it can
dang.
right now to make up on lost revenue,
Mm.
and they're just playing to
It's
your
great
feelings
stuff.
and emotions of wanting basketball
Well,
right
they're
now.
playing right. They're playing right. They're paying for dinner. They're buying drinks. They've got a pool, and I'm just
Hey.
sitting back enjoying every minute of it. So
I just-
I'm in.
Wow.
I'm in.
Hey, yeah. Wow. As much as it hurt to see Dame just shred the Mavs yesterday, I can't help but respect the dude because
Yeah.
honestly, it seems like he views his teammate, like his opponents, as very much so as
Sean's weekly piss.
co-workers.
Oh, jeez.
Jesus, Sean. It very much so seems like he's. Hold on 1 second, folks. Sean knocked over a light. Then Dustin is our tech right now. He's our roadie. Unbelievable, Sean.
We have
Yeah, just being a pro
we
here.
have people for that.
Yeah. No, I mean Dame gets into a circumstance where the Blazers need to win every game to even have a chance at the play-in. And not only do they win, but the guy puts up 110 points, like I think something like that, like 110 points in 2 games.
Can I add to that real quick? And I'm gonna jump right back to you. Like, not only does he do all that, he forces the NBA's hand. He tells them early, he's like, I'm not showing up unless you give me stakes. Like he
Like,
calls it.
what are we playing for?
Yeah, he's like, I will show up with my team, be a good teammate, but I'm not suiting up if the stakes aren't there for me. And for him to do that, he pushes for this,
Well, even
and
if they-
then does everything that you say.
Well, even if they fall short, he's shown. Yeah, and this is right after the Instagram exchange, and I mean, old heads would laugh at this. It's like, oh yeah, well, social media. It's like, no, it was a thing. Like Paul George and
I've got it right here, Jibby.
Yeah.
Running from the grind. You boys as chumps.
Yeah,
So much. So that
Yeah.
keep
Tells-
switching teams.
yeah. Tells Paul George
Yeah.
and Patrick Beverly basically like, look, man, I've been with the same team the whole time.
Sent you both
You're
home.
running from the grind. You joined a team that already had pieces, and it's just like, I've already sent you guys home, and I'm going to try to do it again. And it's like, after all that shit talking, if he even plays average, then people forget about it. But today, the Adidas site's selling all his shoes for $61 because he had 61 points yesterday against Dallas. And it's like he's putting it, not just talking shit with these guys, but actually backing it up, which
Yeah.
is not super common like
So,
in the league.
Sean,
like-
sorry, Jibby.
No, you're
I want to go back to you. The Dame thing. PG is what he is. I respect him. He's got hell of a game. But he's got me always thinking about, like, how I love to rank. Like, so I went all the way. I was like, all right, so where is Dame? I'm going to give you my rank real quick and tell me where you would think Dame ranks in this. Like, right now, I still show love to Steph.
This
Steph
is
still gets one.
These are active players or
Active
position?
point guards right now.
Okay.
Yeah, active point guard. Steph,
calling
then
the point
Dame's my number 2. He's like 1B. But Steph, I still got to show love to. Then I got Russ at 3. Paul at 4, then Kyrie at 5. Where does Dame rank with you right now? Has he kind of lifted himself into that argument for the 1 spot to you?
I think that's a great question, and I like Steph too, but Steph he's always going to get that treatment of, man, Steph was at the right place at the right time. And I'm saying that
I hate
because I know that me and you, like, I'll talk shit about Clay, but me and you actually feel the same way about him. Like,
That's not true. Don't ever believe that, Clay, if you ever watch this. Sean hates you and I love you, and that's all that will be said about this.
I love guys that are going to try to, do what they need to do with as little dribbles as possible if I'm coaching. And Dame is clearly not that guy, but Dame he's that franchise guy, and that's it. And so if I had to choose, like, you're going to lead my franchise and you are the guy, and you got a bunch of other, I'm not going to say bums, but you got another bunch of, whoever's next to you. I'll take Dame over Steph any day of the week.
Can I challenge you on this? And like, I think that's a fair point. So I'm not going to talk down on this, but don't you think that Steph could do that as well? Because, like, here's why I think KD is the greatest scorer of all time, because KD can fill the LeBron role, but KD can also come off the screen. KD can do things in so many different ways. Steph, when KD came, turned into a guy that did a lot of things off the ball. When KD wasn't there, Steph did just as much on-ball screen stuff as Dame. Like, that's why I think Dame, I don't know, could adjust to another superstar being on their team the same way. Like, Steph is a Swiss Army knife. Like, that's what, like, and I'm not sleeping on Dame. I love Dame. But to me, Steph is just proving like he is just a damn winner.
Well,
Like,
and to be fair, like, to your point, really, Portland's roster has changed, but it hasn't changed drastically. So, like, the personnel's changed, but the structure of the team's always been built around him. So when KD came to Golden State, there was no doubt of who was going to be the guy.
Right.
And as good as Steph is, as good as Clay is, there's no doubt that KD.
and Steph's humility to be an MVP and accept that, to me, is another. Like, go ahead.
Exactly. But when it comes to Dame, we've never even seen him we've never seen him in a situation where it's even debatable who the best player on the team is.
Yeah.
So as much as I respect him, and as much as like I said, in this discussion, I'm Dame all the way. we haven't been able to see a dynamic between him and
So
like
you're
it-
Dame
like,
over Steph as well.
That's tough. I to
Like
be
if
hon-
you can pick,
Depends on your other pieces around
but
you, I
like let's
guess.
say you can't pick your pieces. Who
Well,
do you
if
think
I
is
have to
just
pick one,
who
I
do you
like-
think's the better player
I
right
like
now?
I like Dame. I like Dame because he's a bit bigger. I value him more on defense, and I think he's better going to the basket. So it depends on situation and system. But if we're just going just dry, at this point, and so I can't say a couple of years ago, but right now I got to go Dame.
That's fair.
Yeah. It's
I
close.
challenged
It's
you
close.
originally, so I want to give you a chance to rebuttal on that. So I'm gonna give
Hey,
you the mic.
this is nothing I take lightly because we're talking about the first unanimous MVP
That's right.
when we're criticizing. I'm not criticizing
bad
Steph,
man.
but when we bring up his name. But if you put Steph on the Phoenix Suns, and I know we're going to talk about the Suns later, like he's not a unanimous MVP.
Steph was put on the Suns. The Warriors were the Suns when he got drafted there.
Oh,
That's
had
what they
more-
were.
had
They were-
more-
they
they
were-
had a little bit more weapons than the Suns.
They had Monte Ellis and nothing else.
That's an all-star. Who's the other all-star on the Suns?
When-
Exactly. Okay.
Devin
so
Booker?
Back to no. there's
Devin
one-
Booker
there's-
shooting a shot at Jenner and scoring 30 a night.
Jesus. Look, this Dame Lillard is. I think we're looking at this through the eyes of a coach, and we see that Dame Lillard doesn't take he doesn't have the best shot selection, taking step back threes all the time. But the dude is a gamer. He scores at all three levels. He works his ass off on defense. He's in a tough spot right now where, like, let's be honest, like if I had any criticism of him, you got to make the playoffs, dude.
Very, very rarely. Yeah, you do.
You gotta make the
You
playoffs,
have
man.
to, but very, very rarely. This is another thing. Like shot selection, I agree on, but very rarely do you catch him playing poorly 2 times in a row.
Yeah.
And I value that because there's guys that have a lot more clout than he does. Harden is one of them. Curry is another one of them. Those guys are very, very they're great more often than not, but it's like those guys, I've seen them have slumps, and it's like with Dame, man, very rarely do you see him play poorly 2 times in a row because he almost takes it personal.
Yeah.
Just like when he misses those free throws against the Clippers, you don't see a lot of talk other than the exchange on Instagram, but you don't see a whole lot of talk. He doesn't go in on interviews and stuff like that. He just comes out and scores 110 points in 2 games and lights your ass up. And if there's something to be respected about that. He has an edge that is increasingly uncommon in pro sports, and so that's why I'm a fan.
And I think we can agree. Sorry, I'll go to you next. But I think we can all agree. Like we're talking about like 2 nice cars. Like we're not disappointed in
sure.
either one of these. Like that. This is 2 incredible 1A 1B guys. So like I think we're similar. I put Steph a little bit ahead. You were about to say something. I'm gonna give you the floor. On this.
I will defend Dame till the end. Like I fell in love with his game when they tipped that ball against.
I mean, he's everything you're not. I see that.
when they tipped the ball against when it was him and
Shots fired.
when it was him
Shots
and
fired.
Westbrook, game 1.
Sean is like
Goddamn.
COVID, man. He's really strong within 6 feet, but outside of that, man, he's
Oh,
not. He's
mama.
no longer effective
I
shooting
might,
the ball.
I
so-
might go out and get COVID again just to give it to your ass. Listen, this is what Dame Lillard. They tipped the ball against OKC. This is the series.
just like every other game.
Okay, and he immediately game 1 he
Tip-offs.
grabs. They win the tip. He shoots like a 35-foot 3-pointer and stares down Westbrook, just backpedaling. And at that point, I was like, "What's there to not like about this dude?" And he outperformed Westbrook from start to end of that series. And at that point, I've never looked back, man. He's the closest thing to a superstar that is not yet a superstar in my eyes.
We'll let Sean close on that. We know he's always the 3rd or 4th best sports opinion here, and you don't come for that, but we'll he does his best. So we'll go ahead and move
Would
on.
you say his opinion on that was less valuable than mine?
Always. Sean's one of those one-sided coins that are always head that you just hope is tails one time on his good opinions, but every once in a while it just lands on the thing, and it. So, but yeah, he does great. He does great. Just keep giving him positive encouragement. The mustache is growing really nice, really red. But let me ask you guys. We wanted to talk about the Suns a little bit, but we're running a little late. So this is the question I really wanted to ask to all you. And at first, if we can just get like a 1-word answer, and then we'll discuss about this.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Who do you guys think of all these teams vying for the 8th seed? Who's the team either you think is best or you can say is the hardest team that the Lakers don't want to play. Who do you think is the most interesting team right now of all those teams playing for 8? Jim, I'll let you start, and then we'll just roll down, and then we can kind of discuss. So if you want to.
The Blue Jays.
They're good. They
Tron-
had a lot of home runs. You know what? If it's me, I'm saying it's the Blazers.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, man, I gotta double up on that. So people want to see Zion. People want to see Ja Morant. There's a lot of hype around the Suns at the moment, but to me, if we're talking about like potential to win games and make it at least 6 games and fuck around a little bit, Blazers.
I'm gonna be a true homer and go Spurs.
Ooh.
Oh man,
I like
check him
that.
out.
Pop against LeBron. It's an interesting thing.
Check him
Okay,
out.
well, I'm gonna have to knock on the door of Jim and Justin and ask if there's more room for me in the bed because I
Come
think
on,
the
come on, come on
Trailblazers
with
they
it,
have
buddy.
superstar power, and that's what you're gonna need to beat to knock out a number 1 seed. man.
Yeah,
I think it's fair, and I'll
Yeah.
I'll let you go, and then I'll
Yeah.
follow you up, JB.
As good as Dame is and as dominant as he's been, still got CJ McCollum, still got Melo, still got Nurkic.
Yeah.
They're low. They
Oh,
they
yeah.
are
Oh yeah.
they're not a pushover. They just need to get that spot. And it's also more interesting because home court advantage doesn't mean as much. So I'd like to see them get in.
The thing that scares me with Portland is I don't have any idea who on that team guards LeBron. And then I don't technically think y'all are wrong. It's just I think I'm just want to major shout out to DeMar. DeMar, in this era of mid-range shooting being terrible, like he just gets mid-range buckets late in games, and when you need 2 points, he gives it to you. And this young Spurs group, like I've been pretty depressed being a Spurs fan. And I realized I had a case of LaMarcus Aldridge that as soon as he left and Bryn Forbes left, like I love this young Spurs team. I love Lonnie Walker. I love Keldon Johnson. I'm a big fan of DeJounte. Like I like this young Spurs team and DeMar. So that's what I'm hoping. Also, I think it's a pop situation. But yeah, JB, any other thoughts before we move on to our JB, introduce our final segment. I was really disappointed because I misread it.
This is
But
fun.
tell us
all,
us our final segment, man.
First of all, guys, if you've just so we get it in here, if you're in pain and these are painful times on multiple fronts,
I'm in pain every
Yeah.
time Sean talks.
yeah, holler at Natural Heights for your CBD needs. That's at 1880 Nacogdoches Road, 210-592-1060.
Mm.
They've got all your CBD stuff. Go holler at them or give them a call. Yeah, man. This last to close out
Speaking
here.
of pain, talk about a Joe Biden, Donald Trump
Yeah,
discussion to finish it.
Speaking of pain, I can't stress enough how disappointed and how angry I am all the time that these are the two choices we've got for the election in November.
Rock in a hard place.
But yeah, so with COVID and with the situation what it is, we've got to figure out, what debates
is
look
what it
like.
is.
They're going to do some debates, to my understanding.
Mhm.
It's going to happen. But it had me thinking, if you don't do debates, because this seems like a pitfall for both guys,
Yeah.
if I honestly feel like both of their camps are kind of afraid. Like obviously to the camera, they'll be like, I don't give a shit. I'm in for all the debates. If we don't have presidential debates, I kind of thought one day, like, hey, what if we had, in lieu of debates, what if there was another competition between these two guys? So not VPs. So Harris and Pence can sit this one out. If it's just Trump versus Biden, what type of competition if you really want to see who's better than the other?
So
what type
basically,
of
like with that one Adam Sandler movie where they have a couple of competitions to see if he should
Yeah,
own the
yeah.
company. Basically that.
There we go. Like, yeah.
What's that movie?
Billy Madison.
If there's a Billy Madison for Joe Biden and Donald Trump,
exactly.
To get the
What
presidency.
one competition would you
Okay.
like to see? We'll start, Sean. What do you got,
Sean,
man?
All right,
give us a couple.
in an attempt to appeal to the average American, what they're gonna have to do is Joe Biden, Donald Trump, whoever can correctly quote the movies of Anchorman and Super Troopers the most.
Fuck yeah,
You got
I'm in for that.
you got my fucking vote.
I'm in- I'm in for
So
that.
you
Right?
clearly want Trump because Biden remembering things. Is
Hey,
difficult.
Damn
if you can't connect
Okay.
to average Americans, you don't get my fucking
Super
vote. dude.
Super
Is that-
Troopers and
is that-
Anchorman. You heard it here.
that-
You can't
that's
do
the
that.
thing.
I don't trust you.
That's
All right.
movie quotes.
I've got three. I'll try and run through them very quickly.
Okay.
Okay. Spelling bee. I would just love to see Donald Trump and Joe
Yes.
Biden doing a spelling bee.
Hell yeah.
Donald Trump yelling at the moderator, "You're giving Joe Biden all the easy ones."
That's fake news.
It's a word nobody
Second-
else knows yet.
Yeah.
Second is a whodunit, where they put a random quote that most likely either one of them could have said because they're old racist white guys, and just try to make them pick which one said it, and get to see the jest on the other person's face.
Multiple choice.
Yeah, it's like, and then there's gonna be a couple where like, okay, it's a wild card. It's either both of you or neither. So it'd be really fun doing it that way. And third, I mean, speaking of the American thing, I want to see Joe Biden and Donald Trump in a Nathan's hot dog eating competition for the president of the United States of America.
Yes.
Those are my three topics.
God,
Just
that's
imagine all that mustard.
Jim. Jim, what would you like?
Well, there's a board game called Taboo where you have to avoid saying a particular word, and
Okay.
I would just enjoy seeing the frustration on both their
I
faces.
like that. I like that.
Any drinking game that you can come up with where they're drinking Metamucil. I think,
Nice.
and the winner is the one who doesn't go first.
I like
Nice.
it.
And I think probably the funniest might be if you've been to Urban Air or a place like that, they've got that big padded jousting thing. where
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
Like try and get.
Little,
Can you imagine those two
American
jokers doing that?
gladiators.
Yes,
a little bit
absolutely.
of that.
Those two
JB,
be a good time.
All right. I guess for me, if in lieu of presidential debates, if I had to come up with some competitions, two come to mind. I would like to have some sort of physical obstacle course like Ultimate Ninja Warrior,
Okay.
and we can
they'd both just fall off
yeah.
the first row.
so we can
We're fucked.
adjust it for senior citizens, but
Hey.
those two
Biden can ride a bike.
yeah, but
Just saying.
I would say kind of an Ultimate Ninja Warrior type of thing, obstacle course. And then the second one, and probably the better one, I would say, put them in a room full of attractive women and see who can hold out without doing anything inappropriate the longest. And whoever wins that
No physical.
A
gets-
Victoria's Secret
gets-
competition.
Yeah, gets the nod.
I
So
like that.
put them
lot.
put them in a room full of models, and whoever can hold off
Hashtag me
by
too.
doing
Nope.
anything inappropriate towards
Grabbing
women
or
for the
sniffing
longest.
or anything.
Exactly. That's who wins.
That's a really low bar.
Hey, real quick.
That's where we're at.
One of the viewers, Bobby Patel,
Oh,
Shout out Bobby. What up?
only showed up to see Sean's stash.
nice.
Sean Stash brings a fair amount of viewers to the show.
And Devin Rajesh, is that?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh, boy.
Someone explained to me how long it took Sean to grow that mustache. I need answers.
Tell us now.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
Enough
guys,
basketball talk. She says. He says.
as we wrap up this conversation, I just wanted to one more time for you guys to know and understand that it's okay to have different opinions. That on here we did that 4 or 5 times, and I think that's so important in this day of social media for you to be able to respect others' opinions, listen.
We're all
and-
still here drinking beers together, and we're all still friends, to my knowledge. So.
That's right, and I think you want to seek out other people's opinions that are a little bit different. So just in a world where everyone's trying to find their own echo chamber, just to continue to try and find differing views and opinions, and be willing to respect and listen. And guys, we enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. See you guys next time.
Yeah,
JB, anything else?
Man, we've
poem?
maybe next time we've got a very
There once was a man from Nantucket.
we've got a very
Like and follow.
we've got a very very cool show for you guys next week. We've got still
Oh, hit 'em
Austin
with it.
still Austin is sponsoring the show with some custom cocktails. Yeah, little saucy. So yeah, we encourage you guys to come in. There'll be material on the social media this week. So catch us next week. We're looking forward to it.
Be Sean's first drink since COVID.
Oh.
He just fake drinks these.